Yeah,
Okay, it's right there.
we have a program, an open program that's in
pull this out? We don't need this, right? Okay, so I'll pull it out real quick.
Good morning. Good morning and welcome. I'm Fukro Bogosian. I'm the Dean of the School of Business and Management here. And I'd like to welcome everybody to the 4th annual Willie Lanier Lecture in Business Ethics. You have been given the program. You have the program in front of you. We will follow the program in the order that's presented. And this is the 4th annual lecture that has been established by Mr. Lanier. He gave us an endowment of $500,000 a few years ago. And we're very grateful and thankful for his contribution. It's not only the money that he donated, but anytime and every time we've asked him to come and participate, not only at the school level, but at the university level, he has always been here. And we thank him for that. We also have some distinguished members of the Dean's Advisory Board. Mr. Turnipseed, right here. Ms. Howard, Mr. Hash, Mr. Harper, and we also have our speaker's mother right here. Welcome. We have our provost in our midst. Dr. McFadder is here. And I see a number of university administrators and faculty and students here. Welcome to everybody. I'm going to ask Mr. Lanier to give some opening remarks about his vision and thought about ethics and how he got to where he got. And then we'll follow the order as presented in the program. Mr. Lanier.
Thank you, Dr. Bogosian. Good morning, and I would like to thank all of you who've taken the time to be here this morning for the 4th annual Willie Lanier Endowed Lectureship in Business Ethics. I'll take a few moments just to give you some background as to how I came to decide the worthiness of something that's called an endowed chair and business ethics and how that all ties together. I happen to have a background that many remember that dealt with sport, and sport started to become a framework of how to participate in a sport. And many of you who watch NFL football today see many of the rule changes that you've heard about. Some of the players complain about it, but the whole idea was to create a way that young men could participate in an athletic activity, do it in a way that it could be done more safely, and still enjoy the outcomes that could be a part of their future. So that being said, I had a background from an educational standpoint that went back to 1975 at the University of Virginia. And at that time, there was a program called the Darden School of Business, a 6-week summer program. So I was the first African American to attend the executive program at the Darden School in 1975 at the University of Virginia. One of the professors taught a course in business ethics, behavioral science and business ethics. So it gave me a chance, even when I was in between leaving sport and going forward in industry, to have some clarity and a thought about how do you manage a word that is one of the most important words, I believe, in your life. Obviously, you have your prayer, you have your religion. Then you have this other word, and that word is ethics. And how are you going to manage yourself? How are you going to manage those around you? How are you going to believe that there's a guide that is tremendously important? So with that, I thought that I would plan a way to try to influence others, to offer a reasonable posture of a word, and have that supported as an endowed chair in business ethics. And for those of you who are here today, and as you go forward in your life and things that you might do as a graduate of this fine institution, you can decide what things that are important to you, but hopefully your being here has caused you to take the time to explore what this is going to be about. So with that being said, I would like to welcome Mr. Larry Turner, Deputy Inspector General, U.S. Department of Labor, to be the 4th annual speaker at this event. Mr. Turner.
Thank you.
Attention, comrades. In a few minutes, we'll be hearing from the Deputy Inspector General of the U.S. Department of Labor and a member of the Senior Executive Service, Larry D. Turner. This Morgan Bear was sworn into this Tier 3 role, 3-star general equivalent, on September 8, 2014. He is in charge of 360 special agents, auditors, and support staff nationwide, and oversees an operating budget of over $86 million. As you can see from his extensive bio, he has held positions within the Office of Communication and Congressional Liaison, the Army Installation Management Command, and the Department of Defense. Deputy Inspector General Turner holds degrees and certificates from Golden Gate University, the Industrial College of the Armed Forces, National Defense University, Harvard, and Georgetown. But he is most proud of his beginning, earning his Bachelor's of Science degree in business here at the illustrious Morgan State University. Just take a look at his extensive bio again. Between his degrees, military and service awards, and growth in the military and government, the orange and blue of Morgan State University is well represented wherever he goes. So as you can see, our highly accomplished Deputy Inspector General Turner was once member of the Bear Battalion, a life member of the Morgan State University Alumni Association, and will forever be a smooth brother of the Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated, initiated here at the Alpha Iota Chapter. Deputy Inspector General Turner, on behalf of everyone in this room, we would like to thank you for taking and serving 24 years in the U.S. Army before retiring as Lieutenant Colonel. So comrades, please stand and join me in welcoming Deputy Inspector General Larry D. Turner.
I'd like to thank Jada, first of all, for that introduction. I want to tell you, I am somebody. And I'm not somebody just because of what she said. I'm somebody because I'm a graduate of Morgan State University. We are the bears. Don't take no bear. Get mad in a minute? Jump in your chair. All right, can I do that? We're going to have some fun today, guys. I mean, I came here to have fun. I'm at home, right? Yeah. Okay, I just want to make sure. And you know, today, first of all, let me thank the legendary. See, a lot of people don't know who he is. A lot of people don't understand that Mr. Lanier, he is old school NFL football Hall of Famer. Yeah. If you've heard of Jim Brown, you need to have heard of Willie Lanier. And I want to thank him for putting on this series, this lecture series, because I think it's important to bring in business leaders from around the world and come here and talk to our students. And so I just want to thank him for that. I think it was a great idea. Thanks for your investment. I think that says a lot about how you feel about your alma mater. I also want to thank Dr. Wilson for allowing me to be here. Dr. Bogosian, I appreciate it. And to the board members and the staff, thank you as well. And I'd also like to give a special thanks to my riding partner here. This is my mom, Nancy Turner, Evangelist Nancy Turner. Because she was here with me 44 years ago when she brought me to Morgan State as a freshman. And she's here again today and has been with me all weekend. I went and picked her up from North Carolina. I did a Veterans Day speech the other day, and she was there with me. Dr. Harry again, who's also a Morganite and who invited me to her church to speak to the veterans the other day. Thanks, Harry, and she's here today. And so again, I want to just thank you guys for welcoming me. It feels so good to be at home. And, you know, so today, but there's one other person that I want to mention who I'd be remiss if I didn't bring him up, and that's Maryland Representative Elijah Cummings. Because Representative Cummings is one of the main reasons I'm here today. My job allows me a couple times a month to go and meet with different Congress members, and as I was talking to him, and I knew he was a part of Morgan Board of Regents. And so as we were discussing, different, IG business, we had a little time to talk afterwards. And he asked me, he said, do you ever get a chance to go back to Morgan and talk to the students? And I said, when I was on active duty, I would go every 2 or 3 years, but since I've been a government civilian, I just haven't been successful in trying to get back here. And so he said, well, I tell you what, you got your business card on you? And I said, I do. So I gave my business card. And soon, shortly thereafter, I got a call from Dr. Wilson and asking me if I was available to come speak for the Willie Lanier series. So I'm so proud and glad to be here because I think there's a lot that you guys need to hear. Every day I lead as the second in charge of the Department of Labor Office of Inspector General, and occasionally I run across young folks who don't understand the importance of resumes, the importance of hiring techniques. And the funny part about it is just like you go through 4 years and put in all that hard work, and then some people get 5 minutes to write a resume. And so I wanted to kind of talk to you a little bit about that. I want to talk about strategic thinking because, it just doesn't happen. You've got to take steps to make it happen. If you want to be successful, if you want to have a plan, you've got to take steps. It just does not happen. I was doing strategic thinking when I was here at Morgan and didn't realize what I was doing. As I went through my career, 40 years, and I learned different aspects and different things that I needed to find out about how do you plan ahead and things that you can do to help your career. And that sometimes can be the difference between passing and failing, succeeding and falling to the wayside. So that's kind of what I want to talk to you about. But I'm going to start out, because let me ask a question. How many of you guys know what an Inspector General is? Raise your hand, just show of hands. Well, don't feel bad. My family's still trying to figure it out. They're like, is it a general? Or do you do some kind of inspections? And so part of what I want to do today is kind of share with you what the Office of the Inspector General does. And the Office of Inspector General really ties into business ethics because we are the watchdogs for the government. In the late 60s, early 70s, the government had a problem with a lot of fraud, waste, and abuse in their departments. So what they decided to do, they feel like the Congress thought that there was this need to establish some inspector generals to kind of follow up and make sure that the offices were executing their plans as expected. They also wanted to make sure that we cut down on some of the fraud, waste, and abuse, and that they were operating effectively. So this is part of what the IGs were called to do. And it started out as 12 IGs. And they were for the major departments, Department of Labor, Agriculture, Interior, and several other agencies. And this worked so well that over the years, we now have 73 Inspector Generals. And again, as I said, they have, of those 73, all of those, I think we have probably about 4 or 5 African American that are deputies, and maybe about 4 or 5 that are actually Inspector Generals. So this is a huge task, but yet it's a fun task because, again, it deals with being upfront and being honest. So as the Department of Labor's IG, part of what we do is we oversee Labor Department programs. Now, some of those programs you're probably somewhat familiar with. Have you ever heard of Job Corps? Yeah. That falls under the Department of Labor. So what we do as Inspector General, we want to ensure that the Department of Labor programs are running. And they had a problem a couple years ago with student safety. So they had a couple of incidents across the country where some students either died on site or around in different locations across the country. And so that created, you would imagine, a storm because Congress wants to make sure that these folks are doing and are being protected. I mean, you send your kid to Job Corps thinking they're going to get a GED, are going to have a chance to go in the military, and something happens to them. So what we as the IG do, we go and actually, we do inspections, and we have a staff of about 120 auditors. As a matter of fact, and one of those I'm proud to say is a Morganite. We have 130 special investigators, special agents. And those agents are located all around the country. They are law enforcement, they carry a badge, and some of the stuff you see on TV with LL Cool J that they show, they actually kind of are some young kids that perform that same role. And so these are some opportunities that are out there just when you start thinking about law enforcement. Those are good career paths. So when we start thinking again about the IG and what they do, we also get involved in, have you heard of unemployment insurance? That all falls under the Department of Labor. And there's been a lot of fraud in that program that has cost the government millions and millions of dollars. So what we do as the IG, we want to make sure those programs are running as Congress intended them to run. And we have to make sure that we go and make sure they're operating efficiently. That's part of what the IG does. Have you also heard of the FECA program, Federal Employee Compensation Act Agency? They also, when you get hurt on the job and you file a disability claim, the Department of Labor has oversight of that, and we have oversight of the Department of Labor. How many of you have worked summer jobs and you've heard of this thing called Osha, Occupational Health and Safety? That comes under the Department of Labor. And that's something, again, that we have oversight to make sure the labor is doing their job. And another one is mine safety, which is something that we do just like occupational safety. We go and make sure that those folks that are working in the mines avoid black lung and making sure that they're the standards that the government has established that are being followed. So that's kind of what we do as Inspector Generals. And then there's a lot of things that we're doing that you probably begin to hear more on the news about. Have you heard of opioids and what's going on for opioids? And also compound drugs. You know, one of the problems that we are kind of taking on as a major challenge in trying to help out is the cost of prescription drugs have gone way up. And part of that is because you got drug companies that will add 3 or 4 ingredients just to drive the price of a drug up. So you can have a little tube about the size of a small toothpaste tube, and what will happen is that drug could cost about $20,000. And in some cases, people are not asking for that, but the pharmacists are working with people and they have a prescription, and what happens is they are actually giving that drug to people, and the government is being built for millions and millions of dollars. So that's kind of what the IT does. And so it's a great field. It's a field that I say a lot of folks that major in criminal justice, a lot of accountants, may want to consider working with the Office of Inspector General. And so when I think about Morgan, and I think about the impact that Morgan has had on me, I will tell you that I start very humble beginnings. Very humble beginning. And the reason I share that with you, because you all need to come up with what is going to be your story. What is your story? You got to have a story. And that story is just what helps you when it comes to getting a job and showing that passion. So when I first, let me take you back. I have not always been this guy that you see standing up here talking in public. Most of my life I've been an introvert. My mother had me when she was 17. And I had an impediment problem early on in life. I was extremely shy because of it. When we moved from North Carolina, moved to Hampton, then I had another problem. Not only was I shy and had an impediment problem, but I also had a southern drawl. So imagine putting those together. And so when I got bullied for that, and so that made me even more of an introvert. So I'm going to show you something, and I want you to think about it. Here is my high school yearbook. Hampton High. Any Hampton folks from Virginia? Hampton High. So if you look through my yearbook, you will not see my name. You will not see my picture in my yearbook. Nowhere. You will see my name in that yearbook one time. And that's at the end of the yearbook when it says what college you're going to. And I was going to Morgan State. That was the only time. Matter of fact, friends of mine only knew me as the guy with the big afro and wore glasses. Yeah, you know him. That's how people knew me. So I decided to come to Morgan. And part of the reason I decided to come to Morgan is I didn't want to go stay local in Hampton, and I wanted to venture out because I thought it was important that I find who I am. And so I heard about this guy called Willie Lanier, NFL Hall of Famer. He wasn't an NFL Hall of Famer at the time, but I heard about him. And I heard about Raymond Chester. And I heard about this guy called Marvin Webster. And so something about Morgan just stood out to me. And I made my mind up that I was going to change things. That I was tired of being a nobody. That I was tired of what was I going to do with my life. And so I decided to come to Morgan State because I was looking for a change. Now imagine this guy who's a freshman, big apple again. And so here I am at Morgan, this introvert, and now this guy asked me to run with him for a freshman class president. I started laughing too. So, but anyway, I got the nerve, and I ran, and I became the vice president of freshman class my first semester. He didn't come back to school the second semester, where I became the president. And I see a couple of my classmates nodding their head, Betty, yeah. And so then they gave me the confidence to become the senior class, the sophomore class president, and I ran for it. And does Morgan still have peer counselors? I was part of the first peer counsel group. Because again, Morgan I saw as this opportunity to change my situation, and it gave me the confidence to try different things. So, are there any resident assistants out here? I was the first resident assistant, first group. So Morgan was just a great place. I joined ROTC, and again, what I didn't realize at the time was I was beginning to put together this thing called strategic thinking. And that's why I want to share with you first and foremost is that this is the time for you to start building your resume. This is the time for you to start thinking, What's my plan? The next 3 to 5 years, what am I going to do? Am I in the right major? Am I in my major because my parents want me to be in that major? This is the time to do it. And what's so good about this time is because this is a free moment to go out and explore. That's what college is for. This is a free opportunity for you to explore different things, take some electives, not just the things you feel like are easy A's, but get out here and find out what you want to do. That's what it's about. And so at that time, and the other part, and I tell this to students, young students all the time, is you got to start working on your resume. And what I mean, and what I say that I'm thinking about, I've had some young college students or young college graduates come talk to me about jobs, and they'll let me take a look at their resume, and I'm always amazed because I had this one young lady had a 3.9 average. But then when I looked at her resume, I saw none of that. And so that's what I'm saying. You know, it's like we spent all this energy for 4 years of college, working hard, studying. And all you guys are a lot smarter than I was, okay? So you know, if I was able to do this with mine, I can only begin to wonder what you could do. And that's what I want you to think about. I want you to think about, because it's about how bad do you want it? How bad do you want to change your circumstances? And that is something that I've always, you know, like I say, early on, I never thought about it. But when I was leaving and graduating from high school, I thought about I was a nobody. I didn't do anything. I was just glad to be not the first person to raise my hand, not the last, just in the middle. And then I realized, and now that I look back at that, I said, what is the one thing that I wish I could have changed? And here's the other part too. When you start writing your resume, and so listen good, because I'm going to tell you, you know, they pay a lot of people lots of money to tell what to tell you for free. So what I'm telling you is important, because every day, every week, I look at resumes. I teach my managers how to grade resumes. Because I want to make sure that we hire the best people. And I want them to know how to select the best people. And so what I'm telling you is test it. You know, and every job I got working for the government, I did like everybody else. I applied. Didn't know anybody. I didn't have a hookup. But I found a way to pursue that job and to tackle that job. I found a way to make my resume, because what happens, your resume, guess what? When you submit a resume for a job, you're not going to be in the room and say, hey, look at my resume. Your resume is what speaks for you. So it's got to be written well enough to make somebody say, wow, did you read this? Take a look at this. And believe it or not, most of you have the experience and the work experience and education to have a good resume. But it's just the time that you put in. And I always tell people too, every word counts. On a resume, you don't have much time, so every word counts. And that's what you gotta do. So I often see resumes from young folks that maybe worked in a summer job, and summer job you wash cars. And you're applying to be an accountant somewhere, and that's what you put. But let me tell you what, that's okay. It's how you write it. It's how you write it. If you can somewhere articulate the fact that, you know, to pay your way through college, this is what I did. And I'm not too proud to do that. People will listen to you. So that's why I'm saying you got to have, what is your story? And then there's times that you have some of those jobs working at fast food places. There's times that you have some of those jobs that you are doing something and you are gaining valuable experience that you can use to get you a bigger job. Because chances are you probably help with closing the books out, which is something that's quantifiable. And some of the company's mission, you actually probably help them achieve it. And so you can take credit for some of that. And that's what I'm saying. So that's what when I started talking about that, and I will talk a little bit more about that. But what I also want to talk about now is another part of the idea. This is the part that deals with business ethics. You know, one of the things that we do as inspector generals is we work for Congress and all of our stakeholders, the press, Congress. And so part of our job is to treat both parties, Republicans and Democrats, the same. So when I'm meeting with Representative Cummings, I'm meeting with him, but I'm also meeting with his counterparts on the Republican side. Because we are impartial. We have to be. That's what we get paid to do. So when we write these audit reports, we have to be impartial, and it really adds to our credibility. So when I started talking about business ethics, what we cannot allow ourselves to do is take a side. Because if we take a side, then we are just really causing confusion, and what we're doing is compromising ourselves. And so let me tell you a little bit about the IG itself and how the IG is selected and works. The IG is a presidential appointee, but it's one of the few presidential appointees that remains in place as we have a change of administration. So my IG, Scott Dahl, has been the IG for 5 years. I've been the deputy for 4 years. And so only way he can lose his job is if he's fired by the president. But he cannot be fired by the president without the president giving Congress a 30-day notice and have to explain the reason why. So although we work for the Department of Labor, as we work for the Department of Labor, we have a connection to the Department of Labor. But one of the bigger things about us, we're independent. And so we cannot compromise who we are with our independence. The military folks have an IG too, and some military or retired military may know that. But it's a different IG. And let me tell you the difference. The difference is the IG for the military are non-criminal. We do criminal. So what we have to do is, as we get cases, and some of those cases come through us from hotlines or some, and let me tell you something, and it goes a little bit of what Mr. Lanier was saying. You got to know who you are at all times. And it's about integrity and not compromising who you are. And as an IG, like I said, that's what we do. Everybody knows when they get a report from us, it's facts. It's fact-based. That's what it really is. And so that's what and so as a staff, one of the things that we do is we look at our employees. And so as an employee, when you start talking about what is your integrity, you know, you're here at Morgan, and you have to take exams. Aren't you required to be honest? It's about your ethics. When no one's watching you, what do you do? Well, let me tell you something that we do and most people don't know. As you know, in this country here, there are so many times today where there are cameras everywhere you go. There's cameras everywhere you go. And there's also people watching everything you do. So we have folks that say you go travel on a government time, you official travel, and you decide the conference is over Thursday, and you decide to stay to Friday. That's an ethical problem. It's an ethical dilemma. Now, you may think, not a problem, no one will ever know, but you'll know. And here's the problem. Today, there's a chance that someone will find out. Because we have this thing they call a hotline, and people report folks every day. You know, a lot of employees are doing telework. And so telework, everybody know what that is? You get a chance to work from home. Well, believe it or not, we trust employees to work from home, but there are employees that will go shopping, go on vacation, and we've actually investigated that. But again, so you would risk a $100,000 job just to go shopping. And that's what happens. So you've got to have your own personal code of ethics and honor. And some of you know what I'm talking about, but let me explain to you again. You know, my mother said this. My sister had a friend of ours who was a person who was high in church, and he also had a government job, a local government job. And his local government job, he was caught doing embezzlement. And so my sister said to my mom, because my mom, they were talking, and she was saying, wow, I can't believe that happened. And then my sister told my mom, well, Mom, that could happen to Larry. And I turned around and I said, let me get something straight. That could never happen to Larry. And let me tell you about that, because it also involves who you are. You have to know who you are. One thing I will tell you is that I understand if I was to break the law today, guess what they're going to say? He was a Morgan State graduate. There you go. That's what happens. He was Nancy Turner's son. Them Catholics. You know they're going to say that, right? So that's why you have to be mindful and just do the right thing. And so we hire people based on integrity. You're going to get a chance when you get a job, there's going to be times that you're going to make a mistake. Own up to it. Matter of fact, there's been people that we've let go because had they come clean after they made a mistake, they could have still had their job. But they lied on top of another lie on top of another lie. And so, and also from ethics point of view, when someone hires you, they're going to really kind of try to find out what kind of person you are, what kind of employee you are. So sometimes they understand that sometimes you're not going to meet your goals, you're not going to meet your objectives. But does this person just own up to that? Or is this person kind of stretching the truth a little bit? That's what they're looking for when they hire you. And so it starts with a small lie, and they're observing you all along, seeing how do you do when they first hire you the first 2-3 months. And what they're looking for is someone that they can count on, someone that's going to be honest, someone that when no one is around is going to be honest. That's what employers are looking for. So let me tell you a little bit more about failure. And by the way, as I go through this, if there's things that you want to ask me, feel free to, and I'll take questions. The other part I will tell you, when you're out in this work world, you're going to fail at some point in your career. It's inevitable. We all do. We all make mistakes. We all underestimate. We all go through a period in our careers of where we want to impress the boss so much that we stretch the truth. And a lot of times your boss will ask you something that he already knows the answer to, but they're kind of testing you to see what kind of integrity does this person have. When I was in the Army, that was one of the quickest ways to lose your career, was to just be, a dishonest person. And I know what some of you will say. Some of you will say, well, he got away with it. They didn't say anything to him. You know what? I always ask this question: did you do it or didn't you? Because really at the end of the day, that's all that matters. Did you do it or didn't you? Now I will tell you, we're in an environment now where truth is sometimes it's different. And so that's what I will tell you. But I'm telling you from a student standpoint that if you want to go forward, you need to kind of start establishing that. And so sometimes you are going to fail, but you're going to learn something from that. I tell you, I went for a job interview, and in that job interview, I did not knock it out of the park. And part of it was because they asked a couple questions that were more advanced than than my knowledge level. And somebody told me that part of the reason they did it because they already had somebody who was trying to select and they was trying to eliminate a few people. But what I did was when I left that job interview, I went home, and every question that they asked me on that job interview, I went and I wrote it down. And I started taking job interviews, and I started putting together a checklist. I started using those questions that I learned from the previous ones, and I started using that as my study guide. And Michael Jordan, any Jordan fans out here? Anybody know Michael Jordan? I know I'm doing for a younger crowd. Jordan, over his career, did a lot of commercials. And one of the commercials he did that I think stands out more than any other one that he did was this one he said, "I have missed over 9,000 shots." I have lost over 300 games. I've been entrusted to take the last shot 26 times and missed. It's because I fail again and again that I succeed. And what he was basically saying there is, you got to learn something from your failure. That failure is okay. And I know sometimes as young folks, you think that your life is over, but no, it's not. It's a chance for you to become better at what you do. It's a chance, I oftentimes get folks call and ask me for about job interviews and can I hire them, in which, again, it goes back to this integrity thing that we talked about earlier in business ethics. My job is to be the best deputy IG I can be, and the best boss for everybody. So when I go to work, there are folks that everybody's one of my employees. So I try to help everybody. So what I'm sharing with you today, I also share with my staff. One of the things that the IG and I realized when we first took over was that we had a workforce that was not diverse. We had a workforce that the leaders stayed in DC, never ventured out. And by the way, we have employees all across country and in all the major hubs. And so when we started going around and visiting them, they were shocked. They were shocked. And then I even had them, press me and ask me tough questions. Like, why do you guys sometimes hire somebody outside? Like, why don't you just hire us instead? And I told them, we're going to hire the best people. And an organization that just hires internally will die. An organization that just hires internally will only hire people that look just like them. And so you have an all-male force, most likely. And so that's one of the reasons that we preach diversity, and we have given our employees a chance to be successful and have taught them some of the things that I'm sharing with you today. So let's talk a moment, if we may, on resume writing. What do people look for on resume writing? I know the one thing people always ask, how long should my resume be? And so when you're a young person just starting out, it's understood that you're not going to have a lot of experience. People know that. But what you've got to do is, again, with the limited experience you have, you've got to make that count. And also what I said earlier about volunteering for different things on campus, that's so important. Because how do you gain experience? If you're not working a job, there's other ways to gain experience. And that comes from volunteering, to being a part of a team, to being a part of a science group. When I was at Morgan, one of the things that they did that helped me was, and I look back at it now, I remember as a freshman sitting in, do we still do speech here, speech class? Speech class was mandatory. And as I sat in that class, I could not ever imagine that I would be testifying before Congress, 40 years later. And so that's why I tell you, this is the chance. You don't know where your life is going to lead you. You don't know where the roads are going to go. And so as I sat in that class and thinking, okay, I'm the fifth person to speak here, let me count out what I think I'm going to have to say. And so here I am. And so I want to tell you, when I spoke to Congress a couple last year on job force safety, it was one of those things where Morgan State had a seat at the table. I got a meeting that I had last year with the Attorney General of the United States. And I didn't know that he was going to be the person running the meeting. But when I went and sat at the meeting, it was like 9 of us that attended. Again, Morgan State had a seat at the table. And so I don't know what you've heard about, or what your friends, or what schools they go to, or the ones that go to these big schools. But I want to tell you that your Morgan State degree is worth something. That your Morgan State degree can help you achieve anything that you want. And so one of the things that I've done with Morgan as well is, in addition to getting my Morgan degree, education, continuing education is important. I remember my daughter saw me studying that night, and she's like, why are you studying? You got a degree. But my thing is that you've got to be better and understand that. But let me tell you something else about that too. It gives you a level of confidence. When you go into a job interview and you're sitting down at that table and you're ready for any question that they ask you if you've done your work. And let me tell you what that work is, because some people may not know. When you're going to compete for a job, what you want to do is you're going to go read up on that company, because you want to know something about them. And it's also, have anybody ever dated somebody and if they don't know anything about you, but they just saw you and they just come up and start talking to you, you're not going to have much time for them because they didn't invest in you. So what you got to be able to do is you got to invest in that company. They've got to see that. And when you come to this job interview, you got to be able to have a firm handshake, look them straight in the eye, and let them know that this Morgan State grad is here. And so when you sit down, and I've had the same conversation with some of my staff. Some people have. I had this one lady who complained about they were never hiring her, and I looked into it because that's part of what I do. And when I looked into it, I actually sat on a hiring panel that she came in to interview for a job. And the funny thing that happened on that hiring panel was every time they asked her a question, she started looking up here, looking for the answer, instead of looking them straight in their eye and answering the question. And that's what separates. Let me tell you something else about interviews. If you get called for an interview, they are saying you're qualified. That's what they're saying. Now what they want to do is for you to sell yourself. How are you going to do? And so when you go to a lot of times, now don't get me wrong, there are some jobs that they always may have a pre-selection, somebody in mind they want to hire. And that's okay. Well, it's not okay. They should be doing it. But one thing I try to do when I go in job interviews, and I preach to people to do, is you go to a job interview, because there's a chance for you to measure yourself. Can I talk to the guys a minute and maybe some of the ladies? When you see a lady and you want to get close, you want to talk to her, you go in there and your wrap is tight. Right? Am I right?
Oh, yeah.
Am I right?
Good.
And so when you go in there, you don't go in there, don't know nothing about them, hemming and hawing. You go in there and you are prepared. And so when I go to a job interview, even if I don't get the job, if I know that I have done my best to prepare myself, then I'm happy. And that's how you got to look at it. And then the other part I always tell people is that apply, apply, apply. All it takes is one yes. All it takes is one yes, and your life changes. So that's what you want to do. So let's talk about the interview questions. I met this young man last week, and this young man said to me, he didn't even know me. We see each other on the metro going home and going to work. And so one day he saw me on the metro, and he said, I just had a job interview. It was a telephone interview, and I don't know how I did. He said, one question that threw me was, they asked me, tell me a little bit about yourself. And I thought that was the easiest one. and he didn't know how to answer that. So I told him, and I'll tell you today, what that question is really trying to find out. What that question is really there for is for you to be able to summarize the highlights of your resume. That's really what it is. And also it gives that organization a chance for you to present yourself, for them to hear from you, because they have not heard your voice. They don't know what you sound like. So this is your chance to do that. And so he was like, he said, God, I wish I had talked to you before. But now you learned something, and that's what he found out. And he was fortunate because that was a phone interview, so he was going to get another opportunity to do a follow-up interview. But that's and another part that they do when they ask that question, they are trying to loosen you up a little bit. They know when you come in a job interview that you're nervous. That's the first question. So they want to see how do you handle that, and they're trying to, calm you down because the question's going to be a tough one. So that's kind of what they do. And so also in a job interview, you've heard me say this before, what is your story? Because in a job interview, you've got to have examples of what you've done to achieve success. And so when you go in there and they ask you, they say, what do you do? I was a manager at McDonald's last year during the summer. That's how I earned my pay. So tell me a little bit about that. And you've got to you should be able to tell some stories that you've had a chance to work on and develop, to give them examples of how you have been successful. One day the manager couldn't come in and he left me in charge. And because of that, I was recognized for the work that I've done on several occasions when he has not been there. So these are some of the things that I would say that you need to do when you start looking for a job. I would say to you, one of the things that I hope all of you do is all develop, again, where do you want to be? In the next 3 to 5 years, where do you want to be? And part of that is talking to some of your professors, talking to your parents' friends to find out what they do. Do you want to go 4 years at Morgan, major in something and not know what, and then get that job and realize, I don't like this? I had one of our agents was a lawyer, and everybody in her family was a lawyer. And they had kind of warned her, I don't think you want to be a lawyer. And she again, drunk the Kool-Aid and decided she wanted to be a lawyer. And so she ended up becoming a lawyer, had it for about a year, and realized she hated it. And so what she ended up doing was, she saw that we were hiring for special agents, and she ended up applying and became one of our special agents, and she loves it. So what I would say to you is try to find out what your passion is, what you love to do, because then it's no longer work. Are there anybody have any questions that I can answer? Morgan State students, you don't have any questions? Yes, sir.
Yes, a quick question. Outstanding lessons learned. 78 grad Morgan alum. I know you well in your background, Larry. Congratulations.
Thank you.
You said something very important in the very beginning. You talked about failures. What would you say was your first encounter with failure in any role since you left Morgan, and what did you learn from it?
Good question. One of the challenges that I had when I first left Morgan was, after being in an environment that's completely African-American, but mostly African-American, I was in the Army, which is not completely African-American. And so part of my adjustment was to all of a sudden be in this environment. And let me just say, the Army environment is very conservative. And so there was things that I had to learn how to do was, how do you behave socially? And one of the things that I found out was, for instance, they would say things like, the boss would be having a get-together over his house Saturday night. And I'm coming from fresh out of Morgan, graduate. I'm like, my work hours is like from Monday through Friday. And so one of the things that I had to learn was that I had to readjust my way of thinking and realize that I treated Saturday was just another day of work for me. And that helped change. So why I say I failed, because I went through this problem of having a supervisor or a boss who, he was just different than what I was. And I used to say things, and some of us are guilty of this, and saying, he can't get away with that. And I realized they can, and they do it every day. And so what happened was, I was basically fired. And I was thinking, how can you get fired in the Army? I didn't know they could do that. And so for 3 weeks, I didn't have a job. I was still getting paid, but I didn't have a job because they were trying to figure out where do we reassign him to? And part of my frustration, and part of this was because I was in an environment where I had someone who did not like me. And I didn't know that existed in that way. I didn't know that I could end up losing my career because somebody didn't like me. And I thought that the rules and the regulations were written in a way that he can't get away with that. And I found out that he could. And I was so frustrated with the Army at that time that I actually put my paperwork in for a letter of resignation. I put my letter of resignation in on a Friday as a lieutenant. And I talked to this lady right here, my mother, and she told me one of the most important lessons I ever learned, and I want to share it with you. She told me, don't ever let somebody tell you what you're going to do. You make the decision. Don't allow them to force your hand, because it was hard for him to get rid of me, except for if I quit. And I did not realize that. So I talked to her that weekend. I went to my commander's inbox, retrieved my letter of resignation. And good thing it wasn't emailed. But yeah, so that was one time that I felt like I failed. And let me share this with you too. When that happens, and even in your daily tasks that you will have, there are times that you're going to fall short. But understand that what happened 2 weeks ago is a distant memory 3 weeks from now. But you don't understand and you don't know that. And what it does, it can linger on. Another thing that I will tell you that we have a tendency to do is that and young people are guilty of this, and a lot of older people too, and I was guilty of this. I'm working for you, but I'm mad at you. And so because I'm mad at you, I'm going to just do my job, and I ain't going to have nothing to say to you. And I'm walking around feeling good because I've done my job. I feel good about my job, and I've done it, and I've done what he asked me. But what I don't realize is that I put this border between us for communication. And so there are certain things that I probably need to share with him, but if I'm ticked off at it, I ain't going to tell him anything. And guess what? And you think he doesn't know that, right? You think he doesn't know that. So guess what happens? Eventually there's this thing called evaluation, an appraisal, and he is going to remember that. And so I'm not going to do as well as I could have done. And matter of fact, he could make my life miserable. And that's one thing I will say. So you have to, I think, and this is one thing, Ms. Lanier, when it comes to ethics that you have to remember. Always take the high road. Because at the end of the day, you're going to win with the high road. Matter of fact, I have this thing with my staff where I can get in a heated discussion with you, and while we're behind closed doors, even in a meeting, and I thought you express your opinion, it's gone. I do not hold on to that because I just think it's not healthy to do it. And also I want my staff to have the freedom to talk to me openly. And so that's one of the things that I do. But I will tell you, and when it comes to making decisions, when it comes to making, whether it's organization decisions, I always just openly make decisions as fair as I can. So when I go to bed at night, I know I can rest comfortably knowing that I made what I think was best for the organization. And so I tell my supervisors to be honest with people. Tell the truth. If you're doing a bad job, tell the person the truth. And you will find that there's a lot of supervisors that are not comfortable doing that. Some cases because they can be intimidated. So they're not very good with communication skills, so they don't want to talk to you. They don't want confrontation, so they will hold off not telling you that you're doing a poor job until the end of the rating cycle. Then guess what? You get your report card and it tells you you suck. So what can you do about that? What can you do to overcome that? I'll tell you what you can do. The same things you do here in school with your professor. If you have a professor that you're having a hard time following them, what you got to do is go see them after hours. And you got to share with them, hey, I'm working hard, I'm doing my assignments, but I'm struggling. And a lot of times they will give you different exercises, as you know, most of you know, to help you learn that lesson. Well, it's the same thing when it comes to your job. A lot of supervisors feel like, I'm the boss. I don't have to, come down to you. So what you have to do is take your ego away and go and talk to them and say, hey, you got a minute? And what I found to be very helpful is not to do it when they're busy, a lot of people around. What I found that is most effective if I just get on their calendar or make an appointment to see them, because then they can give me their undivided attention. And that is the best way to handle that. And some employees you got to have multiple meetings with. And the ones that are really fair will give you a shot. Any other questions? Oh, there we go. Morgan, stay in the house. Hello?
Is this working?
Hello? Okay, hi. Hi, my name is Naomi. I'm a senior business administration major. And I have a scenario situation, and I think a lot of people can fill this out. So ever since I got to Morgan, even before Morgan, I wanted to be an attorney, just like the situation you were just explaining.
Yes.
I got legal internships every year since sophomore year, scholarships. I got accepted to programs. I even got a job as a paralegal. One day when I was just sitting at work, I was like, I don't want to be an attorney. And I was like, I don't think I want to be in this field anymore. I don't think this is what I want to do. It's a very draining field, very depressing. But I'm a senior, I walk next semester. So it's like, I feel like almost I'm in too deep. A lot of people are just like, what schools are you going to apply to? You know what I mean? They're just waiting for me to put my application to go get all the tests and everything. So what do I do now?
Well, first of all, I think you need to have a serious conversation with your parents. Is one thing I would suggest. And then let me just say this. There's a lot of different areas of law. And so what if I were you, if you were my daughter, what I would tell you, especially at this late stage, I would just go and take a look at so many things that you can do as a lawyer. I have several lawyers on our staff, and they do a variety of different things. Like even for us, there's contract law. We have our general counsel who does a multitude of different things when it comes to law field. And a lot of it, she's a legal representative for us, and she gives us a legal perspective on the different issues that we deal with. So, what I would do though, I would have a conversation with my parents, but I would also, before I completely give that up, especially if you've invested so much time in it and coming senior, I would just take a look at the whole array of different things lawyers can do. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Tay Williams. I'm a junior marketing major here. My question is, if you come across somebody that, let's say, wants to work for you, and their resume is just not where you would like it to be. I know you said you have somebody that looks over the resumes and you train them on how to pick a great one. What would you personally, like, let's say they really want this, they're really passionate about it, but their resume is not where you want it to be. Do you still give them a chance, or do you give them pointers on how to make their resume better in their comeback?
Okay, good question, and let me answer that two different ways. What her question is if I had someone that was coming in for an interview, or not necessarily for an interview, but who's interested in a job, and say they actually have great experience and good skill set, but their resume is not up to par. Is what her question is. How would I handle that? I think you're talking, there's two answers I have for that. When someone is in a situation where they're applying for a job, and I get a group of resumes, that resume probably not going to make it, let's be honest with you. It's just not going to make it. What I do, and what I suggest that you do, or any student does, is to go and have someone review your resume. And because here's the thing about resumes, it's something that you can acquire and learn. I don't have a resume class. I just thought, as Mr. Lanier talked about earlier when he and I were talking, I just read up on resumes. I saw different samples, and every time I did my resume, it got better. And I kept on tweaking it. And then it got to a point where I had 5 or 6 different resumes telling for the different types of jobs I was applying for. So that's what I would say to you is that, and also ask someone who's out here in the marketplace, who's a supervisor or a family friend to review your resume. And also go and look at different resumes you can go online and compare them to yours. Okay? But by the time it gets to the point where you're applying for a job, and I'm just going to be honest with you, if your resume isn't right, it's going to get tossed. It's going to stand in the position of a manager. A manager is going to get like 100 resumes, sometimes more. And so when you get those resumes, you have like a minute maybe to look at each resume, and you go through it, and there are certain things that I'm looking for. I'm looking for, the job experience. I'm looking for the education, and I'm looking at the area that breaks between last time they had a job. So there's a lot of little different things like that I'm looking for as a hiring manager. So, but yeah, you want to do that before it gets to that point. But the other part I will tell you, I've seen people with great experience. I had this one person that worked for IBM, and he worked for some other major corporation. Great experience. And I couldn't believe his resume wasn't even better than what it was, but evidently no one had communicated that to him. The other part, too, is that you want to have a friend or somebody review your resume. First of all, they may catch a typo or two. Second of all, you want someone with fresh eyes, because then you may be too close to it to take a look at it. Any other questions?
I have one.
Yes.
Can you comment on the value of mentorship in one's professional development?
Great question. I think so much about that, Dr. Bogosian, that I actually started a mentorship program at our office. I had been with DODIG, and I found that mentorship programs work very well. And part of what mentor programs do, and just to get back to your question, you got somebody there that can look at your resume and tell you and be brutally honest on what you need to do. Also, having someone that may be more senior to you, kind of give you kind of career advice, start thinking strategically about some things that you need to do, some schoolings that you need to do if you're going to be in this field. So that's kind of the mentoring program. I brought it to Department of Labor, Office of the Inspector General. That was one of the things that I brought there because I felt like our students need to do that. And let me just say, sometimes you don't need necessarily a formal mentor program. What you can do is you can see anybody who you think is successful in a field and just go up to them, and most people won't turn you down, and just say, hey, I'm looking for a mentor. Would you be willing to be my mentor? And they'll do that for you.
After listening to you, I'm retired and I would like to go back to work and do some of the things that you were suggesting that perhaps I should have done in my career. But I'm just thinking about your plan. How often did you review your plan that you had for yourself that you could give us some direction on keeping that current?
For me, it was
talking about 3 to 5.
For me, it was continuous, but I think at least every 6 months. And what we actually have in our agency, we actually have our managers meet with our staff once a year during the initial performance cycle to sit down and look ahead, because what you need to be able to do, it's 2 formal ways of doing that. Let me just say this. The first, two ways. The first is informal, which means I'm just going to kind of myself, I know what I want to do, I know where I want to get to, and I have a plan of what I want to do, and I may even bounce off my mentor. And then there is a more formal one that a lot of agencies have, where the supervisor sits down with the employee and say, hey, this is kind of where I see you're at, and where do you want to be in the next 3 to 5 years? And so then you can sit down and kind of decide what training that you would need to kind of get there. And it's key to have that with your supervisor, because normally they're the ones that approve the training and the cost of that training. So that's why it's usually a pretty good idea to have them meet with you. And that's why we make it mandatory for our employees at the beginning of the rating cycle to sit down and talk about planning. Yes.
Larry, I also want, I too also want to congratulate you on not only today's lecture, but all the many achievements that you've earned over your career. The question I have is about public service.
Mhm.
Many of us, when we think about job opportunities, we think about whatever comes our way.
Yeah.
And you mentioned apply. I spent 44 years in the public sector, both as sometimes a lieutenant in the Army as well as working for the central bank. And you too have spent time in the military and you're also in the public sector. Say a few words about the value proposition of working in the public sector as a career.
Okay. When I was in the Army, I always knew when I retired, I wanted to be civil service. That was just something I had been around long enough. It was close to being still in the military. But now, at midnight, if my phone rang, then I didn't have to worry about going anywhere in the world. No, but you still get that same dedication. You're fighting for, you're working for a better country. You're working to help employees. One of the things I most love about my job is oftentimes you heard me talk about being, kind of fired, and you've heard me talk about working in hostile environments. And one of the things that I do and I take serious is my ability to change some of that. My ability to get with my managers and have conversations with them about how to be a better manager. When people come to me and say to me, and I had an employee do this when I first took over. When I first took over, I was like a savior. But I had an employee come to me and he was telling me that, hey, I'm frustrated. I've been the same grade for the last 8 years. I've changed my appearance, and I've done all the things that they say you should do, but they will not promote me. And when he said that to me, my first question was, and this is what I want you also to hear too, why are you still there? Because you have the ability, if you're not being treated right in any organization, you have the ability to leave and go somewhere else. So that's what and so now after I got past that with him, what I said to him was, let me look into it. And when I looked into it, I found he was telling the truth. They had passed over him. He had been getting good appraisals. He had trained other people that got promoted ahead of him. And so part of my job was to hold people accountable and to bring that manager and then that senior exec in there and say, what's going on here? Because I said, when it was first told to me, I had to do some research, do some fact finding to find out, is this true? And I talked to several people who we had trained who were their managers and said, well, it's true. And so 2 months later, he got promoted. But getting back to your bigger question, Brother Turnseed, it is something that I think there's a misnomer. Most people think that you cannot work for the public sector and have a decent life. And that is so far from the truth. Matter of fact, let me tell you about our special agents. I didn't know, I learned a lot more about them after I became an IG with them. They make 25% more than the normal GS whatever. Like say GS-13, say if a GS-13 made, say $90,000. An agent makes 25% more than that. An agent gets a gun, a government-issued gun, and an agent gets a government-issued vehicle. And guess what? We are underrepresented with minorities in that field because a lot of us don't know about it. And so what happens is you retire after about 25 years, and you start a second career. And that's what, you and I knew about the Army, but I didn't know about that. And a lot of them are able to work in two-man offices around the country, where they're usually able to work sometimes in places that they grew up in. And wear civilian clothes every day, and we work and leverage our agents with the other law enforcement agencies like the FBI. We work with them and other local law enforcement. That's kind of how we, but all the things that you hear about, all the fun things about surveillance and doing all those neat things that you hear about, our agents do that. And it's a field that a lot of people don't know anything about. But getting back to your bigger question, you can make a great career. It's an enjoyable career. It's a career that challenges you, but at the end of the day, it's fun. This is one of the best jobs I've had. And the other part too, and this is whatever field, whether it's private or industry, when you work, what should motivate you and what motivated me is when you're working somewhere and it's a hostile environment, think that someday I can change that if I become a boss. And let me just talk about a hostile environment right quick. Because I think this is a problem, and this is really meant for the young kids, young people. There are going to be times in your career that you're going to be in a place where you're going to have somebody that just don't like you. They may not like your hair, may not like your skin color. They don't like you. Not everybody's fair. And so what are you going to do when that happens? Are you going to fight it? Are you going to just fight back? Are you going to go to their level? And they're the boss, by the way, which means that if you go that level, then you're going to have to be without a job. But what I tell you we have got to do a better job of is realizing where we came from. And what I mean by that, our forefathers have gone through far more worse than what we go through on a daily basis. Far more. But we forget that. And so sometimes, if you quit your job and then you don't have a job to pay your rent or your mortgage because you're upset at your boss, you just compounded the problem. But what you got to be able to do, and I speak from firsthand experience, even though I had done 24 years in the Army, I had a supervisor who did not like Larry Thomas. And he made my life hell. And so, but I knew Brother Turner said, I knew I pledged your mortgage for 8 weeks. And this is all you're going to throw at me. Ain't going to be enough. But what happens, our young folks, I want you to listen to this, because we're in a position now today where you cannot just you can't quit every time you are upset or the first little thing that goes wrong. This is a long race. This ain't a sprint. This is a long race. And here's the thing about it. Because of your maturity level, you don't know, some of that might be you. So sometimes it takes some adjusting to see. I mean, I look at where I was when I was 20, where I was when I was 40. And I was, it's just like the situation I told you about going to a social after, on the weekend. My way of thinking had to change for me to learn how to deal with it. And here's the other part. It's mind over matter. How mentally tough are you? That's really what it is. Sometimes it means that you think about some days when somebody was abusing people in the 60s, when people were rioting. And if we had people that were weak, you would not be where you are today. But what I'm telling you is that you've got to be mentally strong. And you've got to realize what the B prize is. If you're trying to get your degree and you had a professor that was making life miserable for you, would you just quit school, quit the course, and that's the only one that teaches? Or would you find a way to get a solution? And that's what I tell our employees all the time. You got to find a way. To me, sometimes these work situations are almost like a math problem. It's like, well, I tried this way and that didn't work. Let me try another way, and I tried this way and that didn't work. And I'm going to keep on trying until I find a way to be successful. And that's the other part I would say about this is how successful you are depends on how you navigate what I just told you. Because even whether I was in the military or a civilian, the key for me to being successful was to find a way to work for that boss that's in charge of me right now. That's my supervisor. And God, that way didn't work. He don't make me mad. I go home. And then I got to come back the next day. I got to let that go. I got to let that go. And I got to come back and I got to think, and I got to be more focused and more determined. And I got to show this person how good I really am, because obviously they don't know how valuable I am. That's what you have to do if you want to be successful. Don't think that these people sitting in this front row here, these people sitting here, don't think that they haven't had the same roadblocks. Don't think they haven't had the same roadblocks. But you got to find a way, and the successful people are the ones that do that. They found a way to get it done. Any more questions, Betty?
Thank you, Larry. I know the importance of belonging to professional organizations and obtaining licensing and certifications. What is your feel on that?
My take on that is that, and you said certifications and all. My take is that I want to be, first of all, it's good networking, number one. I think it's a way to, when you're part of certain organizations, it's a way to give back to the community. I participate in a lot of volunteers, programs just to give back because it should be a requirement to give back to the community. And there are so many communities that need young leaders to get out there as well as old leaders to do different things. I also think it's a good thing for you heard me talk earlier about being in those organizations, taking leadership roles, and getting a chance to go out and do different things. That not only are you helping the community, but you're also helping yourself because you gain that valuable experience. That same experience can be used on your resume. Like I tell people sometimes, whether it's at church or not, take a leadership role in church. Get used to being out front. Get used to being a good teammate, a good player. So those are the things I would say, yes, those are all positive things. Sometimes those are just as important as adding some degree on there because now that people see that you got real world experience. I guess I'm kind of getting close to my time, but I'll take another question if someone has.
You talked about learning, and you talked about you can be called, I guess, studying a lot. And my question is, I'm an MBA student as well, and I'm about to graduate in May 2019.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, I do a lot of studying as far as the coursework and things like that, but I want to know what other materials can you suggest that I study on my leisure time to be a success?
I always think current events is helpful. Because it's good to know what's going on around you. It's good to be able to go, and that also helps you socially. When you go to a social event, it's good to be well-rounded, to have different things to talk about. So when people's talking about what's going on in the world, on the other side of the world, people are talking about what's going on in the economy. So those are things that are very helpful. You just don't want to be someone that just knows have book sense, as they say, and not common sense, but you also want to be a well-rounded person. And being a well-rounded person that feel like you can go somewhere and talk to anybody. That's always kind of my goal, to go to a party or go to a social event and be able to talk to anybody. And you should be able to do that as a college graduate. And the other thing I would say, because I thought you was going another direction with that question, I would say to you as well, when it comes to studying, I mentioned studying and getting prepared for a interview. Let me say this. What I'm talking about on that is, when you go to a job interview, you should have certain a number of questions that you should be able to anticipate. Because you read the job announcement, and so and whatever the job announcement may be, there's going to be several questions that's going to flow from that. And so what I used to do was, I used to use that as a study guide, and I write down what I thought those questions were going to be. And then I would think of 2 or 3 scenarios that I could throw in if they asked me. And I could use that to kind of really explain my answer. And that sounds so good, because when they ask you this question, and then you're able to, they're like, wow. And so you just come off a lot stronger in an interview. The other thing I would tell you about an interview, if you go to an interview, learn something about the company you're going to. They're going to ask you at some point, do you have any questions that you want to ask them? And I tell you what, place that I've been in interviews, if you say you don't, nothing, they're kind of like, that's not good. That's something that really, because they want somebody that's engaging, someone that's motivated, someone that's fired up to come in here and work in their organization. And if you're somebody that come in there like, I don't know. The other part about it, you may not want to work for the organization. It's a two-way street. So it's a chance to kind of find out a little bit about them, but also a chance for them to find out about you. And I take one more. Is there one? Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon. This is profound. I'm a U.S. Navy retired, and this has helped me profusely. I mean, I've been retired 2014 officially. I decided to raise my family, and so now I'm thinking about. It gave me the opportunity to look into my community and see where there's a need, and with my veterans, my fellow veterans, and so I like what you said about public service, because that's something that I wanted to do. I know a lot of my friends were like, well, why don't you just do what you did in the military and just cybersecurity for 20 years? I don't want to do that. So thank you so much for this. This was definitely a blessing.
Well, you are a young lady after my heart. You know, when I first retired from the Army, my wife kept sending me these job announcements about working in the ops. And I was like, I worked in the ops for about 15 years. That's when so I learned in the military not what I didn't want to do. And that was one thing I learned. Thank you. Again, I want to thank all of you guys. I really appreciate being here. And I leave you one question, especially for my college students and soon-to-be college graduates. What's your story? What will be your story? Because I'm telling you, when you go for a job interview, that's your chance to convince people and sell people on what your story is. And when you have that, it just changes a lot of things. It really makes people look at you completely different. Because you can be passionate about it. But if you come in there and you don't really have a story, I'm just here because I see y'all pay well. And here's one thing you don't want to do. I'll leave this, I want to end this on a fun note. So I had this one guy that we were interviewing, and this was years ago. And so he was an attorney. I don't have anything against attorneys. And so we had a panel of about 4 people. And this guy asked us, we said, well, if we were to hire you, when could you start? And so the dude pulls out a Palm Pilot and says, and you know, me and the camera, we look at this, is he serious? and there was no doubt in my mind before. There was no doubt in my mind. He had been like 4 or 5 months without a job, but because I think he was a military reservist. And there was no doubt in my mind that his wife said to him, "Don't blow this." Thank you.
First, I want to say a very, very special thank you to Mother Nancy. Because you put into Larry the fundamentals that he came to Morgan with. You did that.
Yep.
As a young mom. And I know, as well as everybody in this audience, that you are extraordinarily proud of him. We are, as Morgan, I'm not a Morgan alum, but all the Morgan alums, we're very, very proud of you. And thank you for that, and thank you for being here to see the fruits of your labor, because I know that you did, in fact, put in some labor. We want to thank you too. Thank you too. You did an extraordinary job. I took some notes because these are things that I want to remember about what you said today. I first thank you for the real talk, right? And the real talk from a person who has already arrived at places where our students want to be and want to go. You know, as academics, we hear lots and lots of theoretical things and about research and about all of that, but what you did today is to give us real talk. And we thank you for that. We thank you for reminding all of us, and especially of our students, the importance of not only knowing and owning and being able to tell your own story. That's a good thing. And to not be ashamed of where you came from, right? Use that as an opportunity, as Mr. Jones said earlier, to make some real decisions about how you want to change your circumstances. We heard that really loudly, and we thank you for that. I really thought it was great that you emphasized the idea of start your strategic thinking now. Yes, college is a place for exploration, for having fun, for getting to know people, building lifetime friendships, and so on. But it's also an opportunity for you to learn what your passion is and to, put that beside other people's passions for you, like your parents, right? Like your friends, like what you see on TV, right? It's to find out what your passion is, right? And to build on that as well. The ability to be impartial and to have integrity and honor and ethics and knowing who you are. Mr. Jones came to us at Morgan pretty much knowing who he is, but where did he get the way he round that out was here at Morgan. He rounded that sense of who you are, here at Morgan. And this is indeed a special place and a special opportunity for all of us to do that. We also learned about failures. Boy, do failures hurt, right? They take us places that we really, really don't. That tripped me out, the number of balls that Michael Jordan missed. I never knew that. Did you all know he missed that many times? I just thought he made them all. But I guess he don't. The other thing that I always want to remember and to remind people of is holding grudges is not productive. It's not healthy. It's not productive. It gets in the way of where you're trying to go. Feel it, experience, move on. Let it go. And so we want to just thank you for those lessons, the lessons about building and working and studying and preparing for your interviews and working on your resumes. That's what I call real talk, right? And we really, really thank you for that as well. I also want to thank Mr. Lanier for being here today again. Especially thank you for paying it forward in your commitment to Morgan, our beloved Morgan. We thank you and appreciate that. And of course, my colleague, always Dean Bogosian and Dean MDAD, and all of the faculty and staff and students in the School of Business and Management. You're fantastic students. Thank you for showing up.
Yes.
Thank you for showing up. We appreciate that. And you just keep doing what you're doing and use every opportunity. Don't squander opportunities to use the advice that you're getting from somebody like our guest today. Use it well. Thank you so very, very much for being here. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
All right. Oh, he's giving me more work. Please.
We have a small token of appreciation. Provost McFadden, do the honors.
Yes. Well, we've already shown you, hopefully, and said to you how much we love that you were here, and love who you are, and love who you have become from your beginnings, from Virginia to Morgan to every place in the world that you've been. And this is just a little token so that you add it to the numerous ones that you have on your credenza in the government, and look at it and smile and say, this is from our Morganites. And as you say, you want to, oh yes, and as you always say, at whatever table you sit, there you sit for Morgan State University. And we really appreciate this. It reads, for imparting valuable insights and inspirations during the 4th Annual Willie E. Lanier Senior Lecture in Business Ethics to Mr. Larry D. Turner. Congratulations and thank you again.
Thank you. I really just like to say thank you to the students as well for attending. You could have been anywhere else.
Yes.
I know it's during the lunchtime, And this shows tells a lot about yourself, that you have the initiative and the drive to be here. And also, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that my mother's birthday is like in 2 weeks, and she'll be 80 years old. So thank you very much.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for attending this lecture series. And my advisory board members, thank you for spending time with us. And Mrs. Turner, thank you for lending your son to us today. This concludes our program. Have a wonderful day. Thank you. Please.
I can't.